This is Chester, and this is Chester's roadmap to success. Sit. Remember, when you're giving a treat, always give the treat first or the affection first, and then you should hear the command word directly after. Worked on a focus exercise earlier. Remember, whenever you have traffic or motorcycles or things going on, you want to try to practice the focus exercise. Now, if you forget how to do the focus exercise, let me know. I can share videos with you to go over it, but it's pretty simple, so I think you're going to get it. Remember, 1 second at first for all 12 treats, and then 1 second, 2 seconds for all 12 treats next after you practice it a couple times. And you're going to practice in different rooms in the house. And if there's kids at the school or something, or there's Harleys, go to a different room, go away from it at first. But eventually, when he hears a Harley, you say focus, and he looks up at you, and you're redirecting his attention toward the treat. We're doing kind of a little bit of counter conditioning, helping him associate when the motorcycle comes, I get a treat. And also, if I look up at the human's going to solve my problems. Please sit back a little bit so we can get a better angle. I think Dad's trying to get you in the shot too. So Chester is a resource guarder, and he has some other issues as well. And I think because of the resource guarding, he's one thing that's nice, and the guardians probably looked at me a little bit crazy when I said this, but resource guarding, first of all, is not considered aggression. But if a dog consistently bites you and is not drawing blood, that's actually a good thing. Dogs have pretty good dexterity of their mouth, and so they're trying to bite to send a message. He's a herding breed. So the fact that he's never drawn blood tells me that he's simply trying to correct. He's not trying to do damage, which is predatory aggression or other things like that that are considerably more dangerous and concerning. So I'd like the guardians to work on the resource guarding exercise in the video above. I'd like you to practice that like 2 or at least twice a day, but the more you practice it, the better. Preferably after each walk that the female guardian takes with the dog. That helps the dog have kind of a better relationship or mindset of her. It also takes off the edge. But we want to do it not necessarily just in this room. This is a great room because we have the 2 rooms that we can go step outside the dog's line of sight in between each treat. But eventually we want to do it in the kitchen and other rooms. The kitchen also we can do because we can come in this way and go in the hallway this way. Same thing with one of the bedrooms over there. So we want to approach from all sorts of different angles. And we're going to stop as soon as we see any recognition, like I talked about in the video, that the dog's being upset or anxious. Focus. Let me see. This is a follow-up session, so I want the guardians to put an emphasis on petting him with the purpose. So if you want to pet him, if he's sitting, ask him to come and sit over here. Ask him to lie down. Ask him to do something to change his state. I'd also like the guardians, whenever possible, to pet him to reward desired actions and behaviors. So if he sits, pet him and say sit. If he lays down, pet him and say down. If he comes to you, pet him and say come. Now, the guardian that is worried about the resource guarding shouldn't do that if the other guardian's around or if she doesn't feel comfortable doing it. Only want to do this when she's comfortable. I'd also like the guardian who is being on the receiving end of the resource guarding to take him on at least 2 walks a day. Now, we did a great job of the walk. He does not like the mailman. We met the mailman. We set up a great scenario, and he takes some treats out of the mailman's hand. Normally, he's barking his head off at the mailman. We can work on some counter conditioning with that mail slot. Let me know if you want some tips on that, or we might do a follow-up session to work on that. But remember when we're on walks, we're going to use the martingale. So remember, we're going to turn it so that the small loop's on the spine of the back, and have the leash go around the chest, behind both front legs, then through the loop, always towards the head, and we're going to keep the dog next to us, on the right side of us. And remember, his torso cannot get in front of your torso, or his chest. So we're going to do a quick correction anytime that he gets out of position. And you don't have to have him in the shop for this point. Remember, anytime we come up to something that he is uncomfortable with, if he doesn't like the look of the dog that we're approaching, we're going to turn around, we're going to walk down somebody's driveway, we're going to cross the street. We're going to recognize and listen to what he's telling us. If he says, I'm uncomfortable approaching that person, that child, that dog, that Harley, whatever it is, we're not going to force him to do it. We're going to turn and walk away the other direction. The more that we do this, the more that he feels like we're looking out for him, and he doesn't have to worry about it. Dogs have a fight or flight response. The leash often takes away the flight option and leaves the dog with no other option but fight. Let me see. We went. What else did we go over? We went over the escalating consequences. We'd like to use those as little as possible, but we might use the second and third one as we need to if the dog continues doing things we don't like. Let me see. I'm trying to think what other things we wanted to talk about. Oh, hand feeding. I'd like the female guardian to start hand feeding Chester. Now, don't put the whole bunch of it there. Put like enough for like 1 or 2 licks, and independent of the guardian that he's guarding. And I want to do that for a month. I want him to get used to her being the provider of sustenance. And if the other guardian has to actually feed her. We're going to have her take some kibble and rub her hands on it, put it in a Ziploc bag, and he uses that to feed her. We'd like to use to get him more exercise because I think he's under-exercised. I think that's a contributing factor. So we have an ACL or a problem with one of his back legs, and so we need to make sure we don't go too crazy, but little games of fetch. One of the things you might want to do is start an exercise journal, and then just write the date at the top, then write 25 fetches. Count the number of fetches, not how long you do it. And then 10-minute walk in the morning, 15-minute walk in the evening, did another fetch, and did something else. Scent games are also a really great thing to do. So if we, that might be something for a guardian to Google and work on during the day. If a dog is using its nose and working and tracking, that's very draining for me, almost more than physical. Now he's a herding dog. He needs a lot of exercise. I don't think we're getting him enough exercise, and so I think upping that exercise and the journal will help you to figure out a certain volume of exercise, a number of frequency of fetches and walks and whatnot. Where you're like, and at the end of each day, give it a grade. And that was a C+. Next day, add some extra fetches or an extra fetch routine. And then after a while, you'll come up with an A day. You're like, okay, so now we need to keep, this is now how much exercise Chester needs to feel good and comfortable. Extra exercise is not going to fix your dog's problems, but it's going to make fixing your dog's problem much easier, and it's going to lessen the intensity of your dog's problems. Now, I also like the female guardian during the day when dad is gone, protecting our country. We'd like the female guardian to go to YouTube, find a new trick or command, and I'd like to try to set a goal for once a week to teach him a new trick or command. And so she's going to teach him, and if you find a technique that's a video that's not working, find a different video. There's different ways to teach a dog. There's an old joke, the only thing two dog trainers will agree on is the other dog trainer is wrong because they think their way is the only way. So dog behaviorist, I've learned there's a lot of different techniques out there. And so if you're using one technique, you see he's not responding, look for another one that teaches it slightly different. But if the guardian, female guardian spends the next about 6 to 12 weeks teaching him a new trick or command each week, he's going to have a sense of a boost of self-esteem and confidence, and it's going to be directly attributed to her. That's going to help not with the resource guarding problem, but some of the other problems that we're dealing with, where I want him to have more respect for her and look up at her as a good person, as a leader. And the more that she walks him away from things that he's saying he doesn't want to do, the more that he sees that she's looking out for him. Really try to emphasize that. The training is really going to help. Also, we can put him in a position to succeed. If we're going to have relatives come over and visit, we could take him out for a long walk or take him to doggy daycare for half a day or the full day beforehand. And then when we bring him back home, he's looking for a place to sleep. And so that way, he will be much more manageable and easier to deal with. Now, right now, the guardians have been using the bedroom, which is great. We want to give a dog, when we have little kids, and we have 2 little kids in the family, we want to give the dog a place that they can get to that the kids can't go to. So remember, the dog beds, we should teach the kids, if the dog is on the dog bed, we cannot pet, talk, or interact with the dog. We can't even get close to the dog. If you need to, you might set up a kennel kind of behind a couch, in a way that the dog can get to the kennel, the person can't. A lot of times I would put a kennel like right here between the couch and this dresser, but facing that way, so the door is on that side of it, and move the couch out a little bit from the wall. So the only way to get to it, the dog goes in here, goes around the couch, and goes into the kennel. And then we put some barricades so the kids can't get to it, and it's a safe place for the dog to go. We always want the dog to have the option to move itself away from the situation. That way they're using flight instead of fight. Chester, he has pooped. This is a nice exercise session for him. I'm really glad we set it up. I think that the guardian that I was most concerned with, I think, feels a lot more comfortable. And if we might have some setbacks and things like that, but I think ideally what was going on is that the guardians were working on maintenance, but weren't working on fixing the positive problem through some positive reinforcement. Now that we've been doing that, let's move your nose over here, we can start making progress and helping him feel better about himself. Right, Chester? Focus. For the male slot, I'm just going to go through it right here. What I would do is grab one of these Tricky Trainer chicken liver treats, smash it, and then have somebody go outside and be on the phone with that person. And we might have to move Chester into the kitchen or into the bedroom. What we're going to do is let him start nibbling on it, and then I'm going to say now, and then the person opens the latch and closes the latch. We do it so Chester you should see his ears flicked a little bit. He hears it, but he's so far away, we have him on a leash so he can't run towards the door. And we practice that until his ears flick, but if he stops eating the treat, it's his way of saying it's too intense. I make the dog sit, I ask the dog to sit, and if the dog gets up, that's a way of saying that it's too intense. So keep on moving it away until you and help him practice eating these treats until he's completely calm when he's eating the treats and he's hearing the male slot open and close over and over again. Good job, buddy. And then we want to do, then we want to take one step closer and practice again. We're going to very methodically, kind of similar to the, at least the approach part is similar to the resource guarding video we talked about. But eventually, if we do this right, we should be able to be all the way at the door with the mail slot opening and closing multiple times, and he is like turning his head to the side and he's yawning and bored. Now, let me see, what else? Like I said, the fireworks. Go to doggoneproblems.com, click on dog behavior column, or I don't know what it's called, but there's a dog behavior column at the top. Click that and look for the one around 4th of July. I always do some videos and explain, because he has a problem with fireworks. That's kind of the genesis of a lot of his nervousness. So follow that technique and solve the fireworks fear. If it rains, especially a thunderstorm, take him out for like a 15 or longer minute walk in the thunderstorm. Sorry, buddy. To help him feel, this is basically, he's just cortisol is in his bloodstream. I think he's just anxious because he thinks he's on duty all the time. The more that we take him in a leadership role, the more comfortable he'll feel about that. If we have to, we can use, if we need to, we can use this. Maybe remember to wrap the leash around the leg of the couch and run it through when mom is over here, so that way the dog can't physically get to the baby, and that way the baby feels a little more comfortable. Or the mom feels a little bit more comfortable, knowing the dog can't get there. If she feels comfortable, that's right, I'm not looking. If she feels comfortable, then the dog will be fine. Let me see, I think that's just about it. I'm probably forgetting a lot of little things. Make sure, when she's feeding the dog, make sure you eat a chip or cracker or something first, and 5 or more bites, then start hand feeding him. Chester, did you have fun, buddy? Yes. This is Chester. He's a good-looking boy, and this is his roadmap to success. You want to come back up to me? Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it.